So in the last video diary about writing a book, I talked about the 3 different publishing methods that I've been through. What I'm going to talk about now is the first publishing method I experienced, which was DIY self-publishing. That's where you do everything yourself. And it's even if you don't go down this path, and in fact I don't recommend it, it's a good idea to have some general concept of what's involved, because you need to understand what's going on as your book is being created. Otherwise you've only got a very narrow view of what's happening. You're only seeing it from the point of view of the writer. You don't get the big picture of what's going on. With DIY self-publishing, you do everything yourself. So you write the book, and then you have to edit it or find someone to act as an editor, and you have to do a whole lot of other things I'll get to in a second. Now, after the writing, the writing itself is a big topic, so I'll just gloss over that, and I'll assume that you can sit down at a computer and you can type and the words just flow out and it's all beautiful. The reality is it's not, of course, but we'll assume that for now. Once you've done the writing, there are typically 3 stages of editing. The first is structural editing, and this often happens while you're doing the writing as well. Structural editing takes an overall view of the book, like a macroscopic view, and looks at the overall structure, obviously, the flow of it, whether it's a logical sequence, whether this chapter should come after this chapter, and all of that sort of thing. So that's a big picture, moving chunks around sort of process. Another type of editing that often happens, depending on the type of book, is technical editing, and that happens typically with computer books, because if you get your facts wrong, people try it and stuff just doesn't work. So with the big publishers, what they do is they pay technical consultants or technical reviewers to read through the manuscripts of books as they are being written and try to check everything, make sure it all works. I've done that as a consultant for O'Reilly on a couple of books, like Linux Desktop Hacks and a couple of others. And once again, if you are self-publishing your book, unless you want to pay people to do it, it's very hard to find someone to do that. Then the third level of editing, and this is actually what most people think of as editing, but it's probably one of the smaller parts of it, is copy editing. That is when you have someone go through the text and they check for spelling mistakes and grammatical errors and just random little things like that. Their job is not to look at the overall picture of the book and what it's going to be. It's just to look at and to critique it. Their job is just to look at a sentence. Does this sentence make sense? And are these words spelled correctly and things like that. One thing I should point out is it's almost impossible to copy edit your own book. I did it with my first book, which was How to Build a Website and Stay Sane, and I read that so many times you wouldn't believe it. But the problem is that your brain, when you are reading words that you have written, replays to you the way you think you wrote the words, not the way you actually wrote the words. One little trick I heard a little while ago was that some people say that if you're copy editing, you should read the words backwards, because then it forces your brain to look at each word individually and you analyse it instead of just get into the flow of reading the stream of consciousness that came out of your keyboard in the first place. So what I did after I'd done most of the writing for How to Build a Website and Stay Sane was I printed up hard copies and put them in ring binders for about 12 people, and I gave them out to people that knew about the topic I was talking about, and asked them for feedback. I wanted them to go through, and what I was expecting in my naivety was that they would sit down and they'd studiously go through and they would write notes and suggest things and find all the places I was wrong, and the fact was I was wrong about that. Basically, nobody bothered, because it's a big job. It doesn't matter how close someone is as a friend. If you drop a manuscript in front of them and say, "Here, read this and check it for me," that is actually a really tough job, and most people won't want to do it. So you probably need to pay someone to do it, but it's a tough one. After that, I found a printing company, basically a big printing company that does books for established publishers, and they do binding and covers and all that sort of thing. I paid a graphic designer to do a cover design for me. I then had the covers printed on big sheets, obviously, with trim marks and everything, and they were all matte laminated and things like that. Took along the covers and stuff to the printing company. They did all the binding. And the end result was I got back boxes of books. But one step I forgot. You also have to apply for an ISBN, which is the International Standard Book Number, and that's what's on the barcode that you see on a book. When you do that, that's a big process in itself. You have to apply through the Books in Print people and get registered as a publisher. You have to pay a fee. They issue you a minimum block. Like, you can't just order one barcode or one ISBN. You have to order a block. So you have to get a minimum block and then assign one to your book, and then you have to register the book into the International Books in Print database. Lots and lots of work. So at the end of this, you've got a book that has been printed, it's been bound, looks fantastic, and it's all registered, but still nobody's going to buy it because there's no promotion. And that is really where self-publishers fall down. You can create the coolest thing in the world, but if nobody knows about it, no one's going to buy it. And bookshops don't just randomly buy every new book that comes out, because there are thousands published every day. They have to be marketed to before they will carry it. So that was a very interesting learning experience for me. In the end, that book did sell quite a lot of copies, not nearly as many as I would have liked, of course, and the costs and time involved in setting it up were huge. So it definitely wasn't worthwhile from a financial point of view. But it was still a really interesting learning experience. And that book has since been republished in a second edition using a different publishing method, which I'll get to later. So next installment, I'll talk about what everybody really wants to know about, which is trade publishing, how to deal with the big boys.